All right. Lab security and web application security policy. What's a security policy? IT security policies are rules and procedures for using an organization's IT resources. It is a model of organization's culture. It's a unique document for each organization. The goals are to maintain confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Purpose of policy. Our lab security policy establishes requirements to be met to manage and protect lab resources of Taters Incorporated by limiting network between critical company infrastructure and assets that may result from unprotected host in the lab or unauthorized access. Web application security accounts for the vulnerabilities on the largest portion of attack vectors outside of malware. It is crucial that web applications used be assessed for vulnerabilities, and these vulnerabilities remedied before deployment in the live environment. All violations of policy is subject to disciplinary action, up to and including termination. The expense of these policies, there is a network support organization must be hired for the lab environment. That job can be shared with InfoSec. InfoSec team must be hired for both lab security and web application security. Time must be taken by the InfoSec team to test web applications. Policy compliance must be monitored by the InfoSec team. A DMZ policy is in place regardless if a DMZ exists in the case of a company expanding into having a DMZ. Lab managers can share roles with other positions in the company, being part of the InfoSec team or managers from other positions. So our lab security policy exists to secure a computer lab, if there is one. Sure, there is at least a spot for people to learn to train, new employees to train or to work on computers. A lab manager will be assigned to be responsible for the lab. They and their backups must be available around the clock in case of emergencies. They will control access to the lab amongst employees. Antivirus software must be running on the lab equipment at all time. Any infected computers will be quarantined and contained until cleaned. No confidential information can be on any of the lab equipment. So, lab manager can share the job with the InfoSec team. A network support organization, NSO, must maintain a firewall device between the lab and the corporate production network and all lab equipment. So the corporate production network is the computers that are working in the operation, the actual business. And the lab equipment is not necessary for the business. Excuse me. Traffic between the production environment and the lab is permitted based on business needs, as long as traffic does not negatively impact any networks. I don't know exactly what you need to communicate between what needs to be shared between the lab computers and the production environment computers, but the rule is there in case something does happen. These rules are here because I cannot predict everything, and these are the rules and practices of the business to keep our equipment safe. NSO and InfoSec can interrupt lab connections that impact corporate production or pose security risk at any time. So if they do start something between the corporate production and the lab, and it ends up slowing down production, we're going to cut that, keep the profits going, the revenue high. I don't know if you have profits. Probably. You're always looking for profits. Pose a security risk at any time. If you're talking and one of the lab computers is compromised and you figure out later, you can cut it off immediately. InfoSec reserves the rights to audit all lab-related data, including but not limited to the inbound and outbound packets, firewalls, and network peripherals. So the InfoSec information security team can watch what you're doing on the computers in the lab anytime they want. The lab is the company's property, and they reserve the right to do what they need to do to protect themselves, including spying on what you're doing in the lab. The demilitarized zone is a perimeter network. Is a network area, sub-network, that sits between the organization's internal network and external network. Usually, the internet is the external network. DMZs help to enable the layered security model in that they provide a sub-network segmentation based on security requirements or policy. DMZ equipment must be in a physically separated room, cage, or security lockable rack with limited access. Lab managers must maintain a list of who has access to the equipment. So DMZ is really good if you have like a file server that other people need to get to, maybe people not even that are employees, but they need to get to some files from the company. They get access to the DMZ. They access from the internet, pull them out, and that DMZ area isn't directly connected inside the corporate network for production. So if that area does get compromised, it's unlikely to spread throughout the whole network. So in case we do get a DMZ, because this is likely, the DMZ labs must not be connected to any corporate networks in any way. DMZ lab devices must not be an open proxy to the internet. An approved NSO must maintain a firewall device between the DMZ lab and the internet. A firewall device must be configured based on least privilege access principles and DMZ lab business requirements. The NSO and InfoSec team reserve the right to interrupt lab connections if a security concern exists. So the DMZ is going to be part of the lab. It's not going to be connected to the corporate networks in any way. It is going to be connected to the internet, but it's not going to be an open proxy, meaning that you can't use the DMZ to proxy to the internet. You can't pretend to be the DMZ to access the internet. An approved NSO must maintain a firewall device between the DMZ lab and the internet. We're going to have a firewall between the DMZ and the lab. Least privilege access means that what you can do on the DMZ is the least. You only have access to things that you need, your job requires you to have access to, no more. So good. That's a good security policy. All right, web application policy for web browsers, applications, and applications running in web browsers. This is the largest attack surface in the company. Usually, security assessments must be performed by delegated security personnel, either employed or contracted by an outside security company. That is going to be the InfoSec team. Findings are confidential and only given to persons on a need-to-know basis. Ideally, only the InfoSec team will know the security, what's going on, the security with the web applications. Maybe some people in management, maybe some people, some of the higher-ups. New and major application releases will be tested and approved prior to implementation. So if you have an update on a web application, if the old version is safe, we're not going to update to the new version until we know the new version is also safe, because the new version might have some holes in it that are not yet discovered. Might even discover some zero-day flaws, things that haven't been announced, haven't been patched yet. All security issues discovered during assessments must be mitigated upon risk level. All upgrades or installations will be assessed before installed. So, the 10 threats from OWASP. You're going to have SQL injections. They're going to try to inject into the database. It's this interesting way where you can type in like a username, and the username gets sent to the server, and the server uses that username to search through like a database of usernames. Well, if you put a certain script into the username spot, instead of searching for usernames, the server will actually run that script as it searches through the usernames and do something. It will search the database for you, and it might give you send an email to you with the passwords on the database. Broken authentication, not sure. I don't know what a lot of these are. I'm not a security expert. That's what I'm studying currently. Sensitive data exposure, XML, external entities, broken access control, security misconfiguration. That's a big one. That's only number 6 apparently. Security cross-site scripting, insecurity serialization, using components with known vulnerabilities, insufficient logging and monitoring. So if you're using web applications that people know have problems with them, that's the 9th security risk apparently. There's more to this on the memo. You get a link to the OWASP manual. So risk levels are based on OWASP risk rating method. I got a link to here, risk rating method. Where do we go? We're over here. Okay. Vulnerability is important. Estimated social risk associated risk to a business is just as important in a life cycle. Problems may not be discovered until the applications in the production environment are actually compromised. The risk is likelihood times impact. Identifying the risk, estimating likelihood, threat agents, vulnerability factors, bunch of stuff. If you get to 0 to 3, you're low. 3 to 6, medium. 6 to 9 is high. Ease of discovery, intrusion detection, bunch of stuff. So, if you discover a high risk, it will be fixed immediately. You'll be separated from the environment, and that will be focused of study and trying to fix the security issue. With a high risk situation, if it's something that could harm the production environment, you can shut down and work on that. Specifically, a medium risk, something that might not entirely be catastrophic, can be scheduled accordingly and can be mitigated for what is required to mitigate the risk and be separated from the network and denied release into the live environment. A low risk can be scheduled and fixed accordingly, so you could still even deploy it and just know next week we gotta install the update, and just plan for that. High risk situation might be an update that reveals a 0-day flaw, and you go, we can't use that. We have to roll back to a previous version that we know is safe. Security assessments come in full, quick, and targeted, all using both automated and manual tools based off on the OWASP testing. These tests will be performed at scheduled intervals, so you do a quick scan once a day or once a week, depending on how fast it is. If it takes 2 or 3 hours, you only need to click a button. Just click a button to take 2 or 3 hours. If it needs to run overnight, you can do it overnight. Full scan can happen like once a month on the weekend. And targeted, if you're suspicious about one piece of equipment, you do a targeted scan using OWASP testing. Current web application security assessment tools are going to be standardized in the company and the InfoSec team. So if somebody leaves, you can put up a employer's notice saying we need somebody that's familiar with these security equipment, because this is what we use. We use McAfee antivirus, and so if you're familiar with McAfee, there's obviously more tools than that. Wireshark, protocol analyzers and stuff. Anyways, they'll be standardized with the InfoSec team, so the entire team will be using the same equipment. It'll be easier to communicate. It'll be if somebody leaves, you can hire a new employee that's already familiar with that equipment. It's a good idea. Keep it standard. Not everybody will be using their own personalized way of testing. I mean, they can, but they have to also be able to use the standard information security assessment tools. Okay. So that's my slide. My references are the information security policy templates from sans.org, security resources, policies, server security, hashtag lab security policy, or hashtag web application security policy. Thank you. That's been my presentation. Go, yeah.